One of the things that always fascinates me is people who claim to be very, very wealthy, but their comments and how they carry themselves suggest otherwise. So I see a lot of people on social media proclaiming to be rich, proclaiming to be very wealthy. And of course, this is nothing new. The thing about social media platforms, however, is they democratize attention. And so anyone can amass a significant following. Anyone can speak to thousands and thousands of people. And the larger a person's platform, some people equate that to having money in the bank. And of course, that's not always the case. In fact, often that's not the case. But over the course of my life and the work that I do and just different life experiences, I have come across some truly high net worth individuals. Many of these people are entrepreneurs. Many of them are developers, or some of them are developers, asset managers, grocery store owners. And so I've been able to watch kind of from afar, because I'm not in the personal network of many of these people. And so I have seen repeatedly what it looks like when a person is truly, truly wealthy. And I want to share some of the signs that I've observed. So the first thing that I've observed is how they give. And so people with extreme wealth, if they are philanthropically inclined, they are going to give, and they're going to give big. I mean, their gifts could be jaw-dropping. And I find that they give quite generously to causes that they care about. When I was in college, I was a part of an honor society that was unique to the University of Rochester, where I attended, and it was called the Chaldeans Honor Society. And I'll never forget, upon graduation, I was invited back to a reception that was hosted by all the prior Chaldeans. And I said, okay, this is going to be big. I'm going to put on my Sunday best. And, I'm going to go to this meeting, and I'm in a room with really important people. And that means I'm really important. And I was so excited about this gathering. So I go to the meeting, and it was in, I believe, the Rush Rees Library on campus. And if you attended the University of Rochester, if you know anything about that community, you probably know the Rush Rees Library. So again, I'm very excited. I go up to the room, and what I experienced, no one could have prepared me for at that particular point in my life. I grew up very, very poor in subsidized housing, and so I was not around a lot of people who truly had wealth. There were some people who were, maybe middle class, but not people who truly, truly had wealth. So I walk into this meeting again. I have on my Sunday best, and the meeting begins. And it was clear within a few moments that this was not just a meet and greet. This space was curated for people to not only announce their gifts to the university, but also to encourage others to give. And so I'm listening, on a wall. I don't even remember if I went with friends or if I was kind of there by myself. But I'm standing back, and I hear one person talking about why they made a $1 million gift. And then someone else talked about their $10 million gift. Someone else talked about their $3 million gift. And it quickly became apparent that I was in the wrong room. I think at that point, if I was able to give $500, that would have been a stretch. And so over the course of my life, as I've met people who are truly, truly wealthy, the one thing that testifies to their wealth is the kind of gifts that they can give. I'm not talking about a $2,000 gift, not even a $5,000 gift, but these are people who give from tens of thousands to the millions, and they do it so effortlessly. And so I was like, wow, I've got a long way to go before I can even think about that. I remember a few years ago going to a fundraiser, an educational fundraiser, and it was a similar dynamic. I think that for that event, had given a few $100s. Maybe I gave a little bit more. Maybe it was around $1,000 or so. And I thought I was doing something. I walked in there thinking, okay, I belong here. I'm doing something. And as the event went on and people started talking about their gifts, there were people who were giving gifts of like $10,000. And they would announce their gifts repeatedly. This event was part of a silent auction. And as I surveyed the room, what I realized is that this was a lifestyle for the people in this room. They weren't just giving as a one-time event, but this was a practice. And they were doing it, again, what appeared to be very effortlessly. So the way that you know whether a person is very, very wealthy is how they give to causes that they care about. The other thing that I've noticed from meeting high net worth people over the course of my life is that many are very modest. Many, you would not even know that they were as wealthy as they are unless you really listen to them, but because they're so modest, the loudest person in the room, the loudest person online is not necessarily the wealthiest. And the only way that you will be able to know if someone is very, very wealthy, if you don't know them well, is not based on what they say, but based on what they do. Not based on what they wear, because again, I've met people and they drive very modest cars, like what could be considered a working class car, not luxury. And they dress very modestly. But as you get to know them, it's clear that they not only have wealth, but they have immense wealth. And so I think one of the reasons that people are so modest when they have a lot of wealth is they've been trained. But they also understand that the more people who understand that you have extreme wealth, the more dangerous it could be for you. Lots of different liabilities. And so it could put the person's life in jeopardy, their family. They could be subject to scams. And then it's just not cool to be boasting about all that you have. I remember going to an event, another kind of upscale event that was connected to the University of Rochester, and it was on the lake, and it was just amazing. And there was a man who came, and he owned multiple grocery stores, not one, multiple grocery stores, not only in the upstate New York region, but along the East Coast. And when he came into the room, you could see that he was not just wealthy, but very, very wealthy. But of all the people that I've met, he is the exception. Like most of the people who I've met who are high net worth, you wouldn't necessarily be able to see it by looking at them. But again, this particular gentleman who I'm talking about, he owned multiple grocery stores, and they had been in his family for generations. So if you have access to a person and you listen to what they invest in, and you listen to the types of trips that they take, where they send their kids to school, the experience that they value, you'll have an indication of, whether or not they're truly wealthy. To say something about experiences, I've noticed that in wealthy households, wealthier households, if the family is white and let's say they have a birthday party for their child, or even if they're not white, but they're pretty wealthy, right? A lot of times that birthday party is not about collecting gifts. It's about the child having experiences. I also have met people, and they don't even give gifts on Christmas or holidays. They provide experiences because they would much rather their children have those experiences. I met one mom, and I asked her, what are you doing for your daughters for Christmas? And she said, well, I'm going to take them this place and I'm going to take them that place. And, they are each allowed to pick 2 gifts. And I asked her if she thought that she was going to stick to that plan. And she said, absolutely, didn't blink. Absolutely. We've been doing this for years. Christmas is not about the gifts that they can acquire. It's about the experiences that my husband and I can provide for them. So I say this to say that, again, the high net worth individuals who I've met, most of them, by and large, are very, very modest. And you would not know just by looking at them. You would have to listen to them time and time again. And then you would see the cues and the subtleties that would suggest that they were very, very wealthy. The final thing that I've noticed about people who are high net worth, very, very wealthy, is that they have nothing to prove, and they don't look at money the way that the average person looks at money. If you grew up poor and in poverty, you could have one of 2 mindsets. You could feel like, okay, when I'm finally able to purchase something, I want to purchase what for years I was not able to give myself and my parents weren't able to give, and so that could be the mindset. Or it can be, I just want to squirrel it away, right? And so I've met a lot of wealthy people who really, they don't have anything to prove. They don't care the kind of car they drive. They don't care the kind of clothes that they have. I tease one person who I know, will you please buy a better car? And this suggests my mindset versus this person's mindset, because he truly could not care the kind of vehicle that he drives. And to look at him on the street, you would just think that he was an ordinary Joe, but he is far from ordinary. Again, as I said at the outset, social media democratizes attention, and it allows anyone to build a platform and to be able to amass a large following. But that does not mean, or that is not a signal of wealth, right? I shared that there are a lot of reasons for people with wealth to be very careful about how they showcase that wealth. And yet sometimes we see YouTubers and they talk about what they have and what, and to me, that is a sign that this person is probably not as wealthy as they want us to believe, because true wealth, it whispers. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It is subtle. It is quiet. And you may know based on your own experience or based on what you've learned. So as you scroll and consume different content, just remember that what seems flashy doesn't always have the dollar signs to follow it. And so before you buy another course, before you believe that someone is so much farther ahead of you, pay attention to how they carry themselves, what they talk about, the experiences that they say that they value, because that's an indicator of, possibly how well they're doing. If you like this content, please be sure to subscribe. You can also leave a positive comment. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for watching.